Hello everyone, my name is Robert Allen, #1 New York Times bestselling author. Today we're going to talk about 3 steps to getting wealthy. Do you want to be wealthy? Well, today I'm going to take you on a field trip. We're going to see some real estate. I'm going to talk about some of the properties that I bought when I got started. And yes, it was a few years ago, but the principles never change. Today, last year, or 10 years from now, the things I'm going to teach you will show you how you can get wealthy on this field trip. Now remember, there are 3 steps to getting wealthy. And why just 3? Well, these are the steps that I took to create wealth in my life, and I want to show you how you can do the exact same thing. First of all, let's come to the very first property that I bought. And I am coming here today. It's a beautiful day in Provo, Utah. We got the Y up on the mountain, which represents the BYU. And the university is right up here. And this is the first fundamental step, which is when you buy real estate, you gotta make sure it's in a good location. And talk about being 1 block away from a major university. Now, I was looking for a property to buy. I didn't have any money. I graduated from BYU right there in 1974 with no job, and no one would hire me. Bad recession at the time. And my dad had given me $1,000 for graduation. So guess what I did with that $1,000? I came right here and I bought this property. And you know, that property, I'm going to tell you, price is going to blow you away. And this property is probably worth $500,000 right now. I bought it for $25,000. Now this is 46 years ago. So I want to teach you the fundamentals of real estate. I bought and flipped this property within about 30 days and I turned my $1,000 into $6,000. And I flipped it. So that's the first step. I had to get some money. I had to get some funding so I could go out and buy more real estate. But you know what? The biggest mistake I made? I sold that property. I should have just kept it and rented it out. The property would be all free and clear right now with cash flow coming in for the rest of my life, for the rest of my children's lives, my grandchildren's lives, my great-grandchildren's lives. What I'm trying to say is, you got to be like Warren Buffett. He says my best buying period is forever. And so, yeah, you're going to flip it first, but eventually you got to hang on to some of this real estate because it goes up in value. So I remember how terrified I was to risk my entire $1,000 to buy this piece of real estate. And I found a member who was a member of my church, and he was a multimillionaire in real estate. And the first thing I learned is that since I didn't know what I was doing, I had to find somebody who did. And he answered a lot of my stupid questions. And I asked him, should I buy this property? And he said, yeah, go for it. He said, I'd rather see a crooked furrow than a field unplowed. In other words, you can read lots of books, but if you don't just get out there and do it, you'll never create wealth. So this was my first one, and I parlayed it, which is the second step. Let's talk about that next. I remember the first principle was just to buy something and flip it and make some money from it and get some cash flow, and so you can go out and parlay it. That's the second principle. This building right here, it was my third property because I parlayed the second one into this one. You take the money from one investment, you take the experience that you have, you therefore expand your portfolio into more and more properties. So I ended up with dozens of properties because of this third one, which I parlayed myself into. As I said earlier, I wish that I didn't have to sell these properties and therefore take the money and go buy something else, but I couldn't not sell it. I had to sell it to get the money to be able to parlay. So eventually get to the point where you're not parlaying, you're multiplying, you're magnifying your net worth. But this one was part of the steps for me. Okay, so talk about parlaying. This was another property that I bought. And as a real estate agent at that time, I was showing all kinds of investors all kinds of properties, and I showed them this one, and nobody said yes to this one. And I thought to myself, hey, I want to buy this property. And so I bought it with little or no money down, and it was a 12-unit apartment building. Eventually, when I launched my investment training career, we converted this apartment building into office space. And we made it beautiful, and we renovated everything. And then I eventually sold this building to a very famous world-class international company called Nu Skin. And Nu Skin has this as their first headquarters. Now down the street about 3 blocks, you'll see there's this big skyscraper down there. And this is the skyscraper in downtown Provo, Utah of Nu Skin. But the original first offices were located right here in this building. And I took that money and parlayed it into the next series of wealth that I wanted to create. So remember, we talked about 3 fundamental steps to wealth. Step number 1 is to find and flip something. Step number 2 is to parlay that into everything you want and create wealth for yourself. And then final step is probably something you haven't thought about before, but I would recommend that you write a book about it. Now this is one of the books that I've written. I've written 12 books. This is just one of them. I want to give this book to you because it contains the principles that I've been talking about to you. I'm talking about finding and flipping and parlaying. This is the parlay book for beginners, and it's called The Challenge, how you go from broke to bank in 90 days or less. But I'm saying you should be writing a book. I'm going to give you this book, but you're going to actually sell your book to other people. Why do I want you to write a book? Because as you organize your thoughts into the system of how you created your wealth, you're going to understand how you did it better. In other words, by teaching somebody else is the fastest way to learn. And if you're not teaching somebody, you probably haven't really understood it yet. So the best way to teach it is to write it down. And you don't have to write down a book like sit at a typewriter or a computer and write your book. You can literally record it. You can take a Word document. There's a little microphone up in the top right-hand corner. You click on that Word document, it will transcribe every word you speak. And you can take that and you can put it into a book. And that is the 3rd step. I made a fortune in real estate, but I made 100 fortunes in books and teaching other people how to do it. This is just the 3rd step for you. Not yet. Go make and flip and parlay, but there's a book in you. You know it. Okay, so this is the property that I bought after I bought that little blue thing that we showed you earlier. This was the 2nd step to parlaying. Going into now I parlayed the complication, frankly. I went from a 2-unit apartment building to a 7-unit apartment building to a 12-unit apartment building to another 12-unit apartment building to dozens of homes and duplexes. But this one taught me a lot of lessons. That means I don't know how to manage a property. And it's really hard. People call you in the middle of the night. You've heard that before? Well, there are ways to learn how to manage, and you don't want to learn it from your own experience. You want to learn it from other people's experiences. And so we want to talk to you about exactly, I'll share exactly how to do management later. But today, this is where I learned that lesson, that I don't want to own real estate that I personally managed. Now, since I said this was my 2nd property, but actually my first piece of real estate, I'm not going to show you because it was a property that I lost a whole bunch of money at the very beginning. And I had to start all over again with the pain of a loss from my first deal. And what I'm going to share with you is that you're going to make mistakes. This was an okay property for me. There were some mistakes in it, but if you're going to buy 2 properties a year for 10 years, that's 20 properties, you're going to have a couple of bad ones. And what I want to teach you about that is cut your losses as quickly as you can. Even if you need to lose money and get rid of it, just get rid of it. Find your winners, run with your winners, cut your losses as quickly as you possibly can. And that's how you continue to parlay from the ones that are your winners to create some wealth for yourself. I don't want you to think that if you've made a mistake in real estate that you're just not good at this. You can figure it out. It's a skill you can learn. And so that's the conversation we're having about parlaying. Here we have a neighborhood of homes down the street. My 7-unit apartment building is just right over here. Everywhere you go, there are going to be properties located in neighborhoods like this. And so what I'm going to teach you how to do is to have a buying farm. What is a buying farm? It's where you literally delineate about a 1 or 2 mile square area where inside that buying farm, you learn the values of what's in there. Now, in my taking you on this little journey here today, we were driving through my buying farm. And I took a couple of months to literally go down to the county courthouse and to look at the owners of every single person who owned every property within my buying farm. It was from University Avenue to 7th East, and from 7th North in Provo all the way to Center Street. And when you go in that little buying farm, there's probably about 1,000 properties. I bought 3 properties in that buying farm that made me a millionaire. And because I learned what the values were. I learned that if a property was being listed, I knew that whether it was up above value, below value, and I learned whether it was a good deal or not. I learned how to interact with sellers. When a property came up for sale, I knew immediately whether I should buy it or not because I spent several months in research. I had a big map on my wall. It was what we call the paralysis of analysis. I was really afraid to go talk to real owners. So what I really did is I just spent a lot of time with numbers and creating this map of all the properties I wanted to buy. But eventually, 3 of those properties made me a million. Yeah, made me a millionaire. And so I recommend that you find a target territory in your city. In my area, it was below Brigham Young University, but wherever you are, where there's a place for employment, where there's shopping nearby, where something makes it valuable, where in that target territory you become the preeminent expert in your city. You know more than the realtors know about every property located in that area. It'll eventually pay off for you, I promise you, because eventually, since about 20% of the properties turn over every single year, if there's 1,000 properties in that target territory, about 50 to 100 of those properties are going to turn over. In other words, they're going to reach out to a real estate agent and they're going to say, I would like to sell it. Well, when it's listed, as soon as that sign goes up, you know immediately what that value is worth. And you go immediately to find out what they're selling for. What's the problem? Why did they list it? But more important than that, you could send a letter to all 1,000 of those properties. And you could say, I'm in the market for buying a property. Before you list it for sale, make sure you call me, because I'll write you an offer on that immediately. In other words, before the realtor messes it up by telling that seller, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I could get you more money for your property, they create unrealistic expectations. If you could reach them first with a letter to them because they're in your buying farm, then you could find 2 or 3 properties a year. This is where your 2 properties a year come from. They come from your buying farm. And because you're an expert in that area, you'll find better deals, and you'll know that there are deals when they come up on the marketplace. That's what I call the buying farm strategy, and frankly, most people will not do that. You know, they're too lazy. They'll go to a realtor and look at the listing service and see all the thousands of properties that are listed for sale. But remember, they've gone through the real estate industry, and that realtor has, because it's so hard to find properties to list, they've expanded the expectations of every seller. You want to reach the seller before the realtor does. Now, can you make money going through a realtor? Yes, of course. But if you can reach them before that, then you can talk to them personally. They can get to know you. They can learn how to trust you. They can give you opportunities that you couldn't get through the real estate industry. And that's exactly what I did. I talked to the sellers personally, directly, and that was my fortune right there. So the buying farm, do you have one? Go make one now. So I want you to get a copy of this book and read it, because it contains all the fundamental principles that never change about how to create wealth, how to parlay yourself to everything you've ever wanted. Click on this link, get a copy of the book, and don't miss it. And while you're at it, I want you to ring the bell, subscribe, and watch the next video.